Welcome to the conclusion of our series, The Certainty of Identity. This is Session 6, Daniel chapter 6, Identity under Legal Persecution. When the enemy cannot corrupt you and cannot manipulate you or intimidate you, he will resort to legislation and try to criminalize you. Daniel 6 verses 1 through 5 reads, It pleased Darius to set over the kingdom 120 satraps to be over the whole kingdom, and over these 3 governors, of whom Daniel was one, that the satraps might give account to them, so that the king would suffer no loss. Then this Daniel distinguished himself above the governors and satraps because an excellent spirit was in him, and the king gave thought to setting him over the whole realm. So the governors and satraps sought to find some charge against Daniel concerning the kingdom, but they could find no charge or fault because he was faithful, nor was there any error or fault found in him. Then these men said, We shall not find any charge against this Daniel unless we find it against him concerning the law of his God. So what we're looking at is excellence that provokes opposition. Daniel was being elevated again along with 2 of his counterparts. But when the king did a second review, he realized that Daniel was distinguished above all of them. And so he was going to promote him over even the other 2. And he would be over the whole realm. And none of them liked that. The scripture says that an excellent spirit was in him. But instead of them celebrating, they became jealous. And they began to look for fault, but they couldn't find any. So they decided, they reasoned amongst themselves, we'll only find something against him concerning his God. When identity is pure, opposition becomes strategic. Reading verses 6 through 9 of Daniel chapter 6. So these governors and satraps thronged before the king and said thus to him, King Darius, live forever. All the governors of the kingdom and the administrators and satraps, the counselors and advisors have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whoever petitions any god or man for 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions. Now, O king, establish the decree and sign the writing so that it cannot be changed according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which do not alter. Therefore, King Darius signed the written decree. Okay, so that's the end of those verses. And I just wanted to point out, does not alter means does not pass away or does not change. And once that decree is issued, it's set, and even the king himself cannot change it. So we're looking at a manipulation of the law. A decree was established that no one may pray to any god except this King Darius. This was not governance. This was targeted persecution because of Daniel's faith, honor, and obedience to God. He was committed. He was faithful. And that's why he was being promoted. Verse 10 of chapter 6 of Daniel is one of the most powerful verses in the entire book. And it reads, Now when Daniel knew that the writing was signed, he went home, and in his upper room, with his windows open toward Jerusalem, he knelt down on his knees 3 times that day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as was his custom since early days. So we're looking at unchanging devotion here. Daniel prayed as he always had. He didn't get louder, nor was he more quiet. He was not hidden, but he was unchanged. That faithfulness, that consistency is what he was giving to God. That was devotion. True identity does not adjust to pressure. It remains consistent even when laws change. Daniel chapter 6 verses 11 through 18 reads, Then these men assembled and found Daniel praying and making supplication before his God. And they went before the king and spoke concerning the king's decree. Have you not signed a decree that every man who petitions any god or man within 30 days, except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions? The king answered and said, The thing is true, according to the law of the Medes and Persians, which does not alter. So they answered and said before the king, that Daniel, who is one of the captives from Judah, does not show due regard for you, O king, or for the decree that you have signed, but makes his petition 3 times a day. And the king, when he heard these words, was greatly displeased with himself and set his heart on Daniel to deliver him. And he labored till the going down of the sun to deliver him. Then these men approached the king and said to the king, Know, O king, that it is the law of the Medes and Persians that no decree or statute which the king established may be changed. So the king gave the command, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. But the king spoke, saying to Daniel, Your God, whom you serve continually, he will deliver you. Then a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet ring and with the signet of his lords, that the purpose concerning Daniel might not be changed. Now the king went to his palace and spent the night fasting, and no musicians were brought before him. Also, his sleep went from him. So we're looking at the consequences of standing for God and the confidence because he knew the God in whom he stood. This is Daniel's approach and his take. And it must have been a comfort to know that his leader realized what had happened a little too late, but he realized that this was wrong. And he even testified and gave assurance that your God is going to bring you through. So as he's arrested and thrown into this lion's den, the king is distressed, didn't sleep all night. He even fasted for Daniel. He was concerned about this young man. He didn't want anything bad to come upon him, but he was bound by the law that he couldn't even change a decree that he had issued. And we know this was done on purpose out of jealousy of Daniel. But even worldly authority recognizes righteousness when it sees it. And so Darius responded with a righteous attitude once he realized what had happened. So he's recognizing who Daniel is and wanting him to come out of it. Verses 19 to 23 reads, Then the king arose very early in the morning and went in haste to the den of lions. And when he came to the den, he cried out with a lamenting voice to Daniel. The king spoke, saying to Daniel, Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God whom you served continually been able to deliver you from the lions? Then Daniel said to the king, O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths so that they have not hurt me, because I was found innocent before him. And also, O king, I have done no wrong before you. Now the king was exceedingly glad for him, and commanded that they should take Daniel up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no injury whatever was found on him, because he believed in his God. Now that's divine preservation at work right there. The consequence became a stage for God. He was thrown into the den of lions, but God performed. He had an angel go and shut the mouths of the lions. Why? Because identity aligned with God is covered by God. The final part of the text is verses 24 through 28. And the king gave the command, and they brought those men who accused Daniel, and they cast them into the den of lions, them, their children, and their wives. And the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces before they ever came to the bottom of the den. Then King Darius wrote, To all peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in every dominion of my kingdom, men must tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God and steadfast forever. His kingdom is the one which shall not be destroyed, and his dominion shall endure to the end. He delivers and rescues, and he works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth, who has delivered Daniel from the power of the lions. So this Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius and in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. So that's some public justification. There were false accusations made, and they were false accusations that were made before the king. So they didn't have any respect for King Darius. They were, playing a game on him. And they, backed him into a corner. They got him to sign this decree. One thing that I found interesting is that earlier in the chapter, verses 6 through 9, we're looking at how they manipulated the law. So behind the scenes, in verse 5, they understood that we have to involve the law of Daniel's God in this. So they came up with this idea and they approached the king. And this is where it picks up in verse 16. They're approaching the king and they're flattering him. "Oh, King Darius, live forever." And then they say, and I'll read it again, verse 7, "All the governors of the kingdom, the administrators and satraps, the counselors and advisors have consulted together to establish a royal statute and to make a firm decree that whoever petitions any god or man for 30 days except you, O king, shall be cast into the den of lions." I think that first part is not a truth. They presented it that everybody's saying this, but I think that they took it upon themselves to speak for the other wise men. And these are the accusers who came up with this idea. So they're working devilment behind the scenes. They bring it to the king. They realize that the king is disheartened by what has happened. And as a result, they're saying you can't back out of this. And so the plot that they had for Daniel's life now became their ploy. That became their experience instead of the one that they plotted for Daniel. Daniel was elevated and his accusers had to take the fall. And then a decree that honored God was issued by this secular, unbelieving king, paganistic king himself. Just want to reiterate the core truth that true identity is consistent even when laws change. And a final thought for you to ponder. If your identity must adjust to survive, it was never rooted in God. Now bringing to the conclusion our series, we looked at the identity of these Hebrew captives before captivity and then even under assimilation. Then we looked at the identity under revelation. Then we looked at identity under intimidation. Then we looked at the identity under observation as the king looked on, and identity in corruption. And finally here, under legislation. Identity is not proven in comfort. It is revealed under pressure. It's not what you can claim in private. It's what remains when everything else tests it. And so, again, this is the conclusion of this teaching. I trust you enjoyed it. Please like, follow, and subscribe. Leave a comment about what stood out to you most about the series and what if any ideas would you like to hear teaching on going forward. Thank you. And with that, bid you farewell, and may heaven smile upon you.